Hello, it's Lauren, and welcome to the show. On the episode today, I spoke with Alyea Sandovar, and she is a gamification and play consultant at Tint Hue. My conversation with Alyea was awesome because, hello, we were talking about gamification. So it was super interesting. It was a really eye-opening experience for me, actually, about what gamification is and how it can actually work for your business. So, one of the things that we did talk about in our episode was, how you can use gamification to help people basically have a better result with whatever product, course, or offering, membership, etc., that you are selling. We went through talking about the inner child. We talked about the importance of having fun. We talked about is gamification, leaderboards, badges, prizes, rewards, and things like that. And we also had some really interesting conversations around tips and tricks on how you can actually use gamification yourself and how to get started. So it's all here, and I can't wait for you to listen. Oh, yeah, by the way, we did talk very little, but I needed to bring it up about the Queen's Gambit. All right, here's the episode. Enjoy. This episode has been brought to you by the Task Reduction System. Learn to reduce your work hours by half without playing catch up on the weekend. So, the task reduction system is for you if you are working far too much in your business and in life, and you're feeling overextended with no time for yourself. If you are struggling with guilt and anxiety, if you're confused about how to prioritize and where you should be spending your time, if you're doing everything in your business but your business is not advancing, the task reduction system is the perfect system for you. Learn to identify, label, organize, and schedule in your tasks and create more time and space for yourself. All the details are available at rawrawconsulting.com. There's a direct link in the show notes. Enjoy the episode. All right, I'm Lauren, and welcome to the show. I'm joined today by Alyea Sandovar. She is a gamification and play consultant at Tint Hue. She helps established business owners create deeper engagement for their online programs and turn clients into raving fans through gamification. I feel like I need some kind of like cool sound effect there. She is also the co-founder of the Playful Creative Summit, a free summit dedicated to adding more play and creativity to the world, which launches every year in April. So her road to video games was topsy-turvy. She was inspired to get into games through games she played with her abuelita, Leila, in Colombia, and that means grandmother. Later, as a psychotherapist, she saw the power of play and games to transform the lives of her clients, which led her to study video games. So I'm actually going to let Alyea like really speak for herself here. Welcome to the show. You are joining me today from your home in Portugal, and I'm in Australia, which I just love that. And we're going to be talking about all things gamification. So thank you for being on the show, girl.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm happy to be here. Yeah.
So what I realized is that I probably should have read a little bit more about your bio in terms of the fact that you do have a PhD in game production, a master's in psychology, a master's in human organizational systems, and a bachelor in public relations and communications. So, I know our listener at home is like, damn, Lauren, how'd you get this guest? Well, just that good. I'm just that good. So tell me a little bit. I mean, you kind of said that, in the bio, or I guess I read that, you really got into the world of gamification through your grandmother. Is that how you kind of started into, I mean, did you have video games back then? Is that what you were playing, or was it just kind of games, in general?
So when we were playing with my grandmother, she would just we would play all different kinds of games. So we'd play card games, board games, and then the one game that sort of made me realize that I was smart was basically she would, in order for us to get our fruit during our uh, I don't, onces, like you get little fruit like breaks where you would get like little snacks. And so rather than just giving us our snack, she would put me and my cousins in line and then ask us um, either math questions or language questions or history questions. And if we answered it correctly, we'd get a piece of fruit. And so then she'd go through everyone and she'd ask you a question based on your age and what level of school you were in. So like my little sister would get a really simple question like 1 plus 1 kind of thing, and then the rest of us would get a bit more complicated questions. So it was through her play and all the different things that we did when we would spend the summers in Medellin that I learned that I was smart, because you wouldn't believe from someone who has that many degrees, but actually I was a quite mediocre student when I was younger, and I
That's
just would get
impressive.
average grades, and I just didn't think I was smart. I didn't think I was a smart person. There was designated smart people in my class growing up, and that was the smart girl and that was the smart boy, and everyone else was kind of like average. So so really it was only playing those games that I was like, oh wait, I'm actually smart, I'm actually capable. Oh, okay. And then I we did end up playing video games growing up, and I played video games in college, but that is where my video game enthusiasm stopped.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't. I just, what kind of career could you have from it, really? I mean, of course you could, but I didn't think actually that was a viable career, primarily because in my family, growing up in a Latin American family, there's like a five go to, and I think there are other cultures and people who come from these cultures who could relate. So, essentially, you could become a lawyer, a business person, an accountant, a doctor. There's one more. I think it's a consultant. Anyway, but there's these five basic ones that you can go into, and any other kind of career is just not viable. You're just not going to have a successful career.
Right.
So so I did that actually. Right after university, I entered into a consulting job, which was short-lived and made me quite unhappy. And instead I went to get my psychology master's degree, and I worked as a psychotherapist in California. And that was really great. But I wanted something more, and I noticed that the times that we had the best times with my clients were when we were playing games or doing something was not related to traditional psychotherapy. I saw more progress in them at that time. And then from there, I consider myself a very intuitive, uh, godly person. So I just got a call, felt like I had a call to go into video games. I just had this insight. There was a startup weekend happening in San Francisco at that time, and it was on video games, on creating a startup on video games. And somehow I just felt like, oh, I should go into that. Could people get a job in that? Like, is it possible? Can I do that? Of course, I mean, people build video games, but for some reason it didn't dawn on me I could actually have a career in it. And
Yeah.
from that inspiration, and that led me to pursue additional studies in video games, and I ended up getting a PhD in video game production. So,
So cool, girl. I love it so much. We have so much to get into today, during the show, because I don't actually know a lot about
yeah.
gamification or even video games
Hmm.
in general. I guess you could say that I kind of always assumed that video games was very often done by people in the dark who
Hmm.
are sitting there gaming out, and they have,
Yeah.
maybe they're not very sociable, maybe they have some
Yeah.
challenges with communication, and I'm very aware that there's like this whole other world that kind of exists in relation to video games. But I guess that looking at you, like for our listener at home, you can just pop on to any of the socials, and you'll be able to see your photo because we'll have that there. But you don't necessarily look like your typical video gamer. You're kind of like young, hip. Not to say that people who play video games aren't young and hip, but I guess that we all kind of have in our mind, the idea of what a gamer looks like. So
Mhm.
have you kind of found like a little secret world that you belong into, like through this video gaming world, or?
Yeah, that's a great question. Actually, even when I'm interviewed by people who are in video games, they usually say I don't look like
Yeah.
a video game person. Um, Also, because in terms of a woman, it's very typical for a woman to be wearing some kind of cool black t-shirt with some kind of video game emblem, which I did have at some
Yeah.
point, but and usually colored hair is like a very big
I was
thing.
just
Like
thinking like red dyed hair, purple or some yeah.
exactly, exactly. And I'm a little bit posh actually. So where I did find a little bit of my niche, people that are a bit more like me, is within the academic settings. So there are people who really love playing games or designing games, but they look a little bit more um, like business people or your average like work people. um, and then of course, within the entire video game industry, there's all kinds of different types of people. um, and the typical idea of what it is of like, maybe a young man in his early 20s in a dark room, with black t-shirt,
Yeah.
eating junk food and just being behind the computer day in, day out,
Yeah. Yeah.
like they say, living in your parents' basement or something.
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
Yeah, this actually is very few people in the game industry are like that. um, Maybe more gamers, like hardcore people who play games, could fit in this.
Right.
Yeah, but even so, the number of people play video games and is quite large. So, but maybe the traditional gamer could look like this. But in terms of designers or game makers, they come in all shapes and sizes, colors, breadths, backgrounds, because there are so many schools that train people to be video game designers and video game producers, etc., and artists and sound engineers. And so yeah, people come from all kinds of different backgrounds.
I will say that a couple years ago, my partner and I, we went to Japan and we
Mhm,
stayed in an Airbnb, and they had
mhm,
a like a PS4 or something like that.
mhm,
Anyway, so we were playing this video game, and I
mhm,
remember just being blown away by the quality of the
mhm,
graphics. And I guess somebody like me, I grew up playing Mario Kart, and that was
mhm,
pretty much it. My attention span was not very long,
mhm,
and yeah, to see the kind of I guess the leaps and bounds that video gaming has taken,
mhm,
since that time was just absolutely unbelievable. So it's not a surprise to me that the world of, video gaming and gaming in general is like a lot larger than kind of maybe the average person would kind of imagine. So I did mention off the top that you are a play consultant. Can you tell me a
yeah,
little bit about that?
sure. So that goes along a little bit with gamification. Um, so what I've done after I finished my PhD in video game production, I was lucky enough to work for universities, um, working on video games, and also for some design companies producing video games. And I decided at some point that I wanted to bring my knowledge of game design and play, or how people can design play, into the business world, and particularly to entrepreneurs and um, individual business owners, because there's quite a lot of people focusing on mid-sized to big companies, but not to smaller entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
And so my goal is to one, teach entrepreneurs, business owners, how how to think like a game designer when they're doing their products, their services, things like this.
Mm.
And within that, I include play because play is the important element within games, right? The object of playing games is you say play games. So the object of having a game is to play. And sometimes when I'm consulting, it's important to have some very specific, um, what I would call behavior science based
Yeah.
strategies, and that's more in the gamification. And sometimes it's more inspirational, more joyful, more off the cuff, more creative ideas, and those fall under the play. And it just means that I support people in identifying, for example, what their play personality is, how they could design their product or their service based on their play personality, how to think of their business as a playpen, or like an area which they can sort of kind of bound as their play space, and like their own little playground. And yeah, so that's
That
that's
is
kind of how I
so
think of
cool.
it.
You know what
Yeah.
I was thinking about when you were speaking there is like very often, service-based providers and entrepreneurs, we do know about copywriting and the value of
Hmm.
copywriting. And a lot of copywriters who hire, it's about whether or not they can reflect your voice, they can speak on your
Hmm.
behalf. So when you were speaking there about kind of
Hmm.
helping people to identify their own, it's almost like you're helping them to identify their own voice within that industry. So, yeah.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, and it's very similar to the way someone would go not only through copywriting but also through their branding process. Where you kind of identify the personality of the brand. But this has to do with, let's call it, the personality that keeps people deeply engaged with who you are. So, and knowing how to play with them, build better relationships with them.
It's so fascinating. I can see why you were drawn to it. If you liked games
Hmm.
and then you also like the intellectual side of things and the science behind it, and
Hmm.
you're talking about the behavior science behind it. It's actually super fascinating. I was telling you this sort of before we hit record, but I watched a documentary on how they make pokie machines and the kind of the reward systems and the sound
Hmm.
and the color and all these sort of things that goes into it. And I never really considered about using it for business. So is this, I guess, can you describe or kind of, tell us a little bit about the definition of what gaming technology is? And can you really use it for any type of business, or do you have to be in a particular niche?
Yeah, more than gaming technology, because what I do is not so much, okay, let's find a software and then implement it for your company. But what I do is the thinking behind how do you gamify a product or service. I don't think that you need to be in a particular niche, but there are some types of businesses that work better. So let me go there first and then I'll define gamification. Um, because, for example, it doesn't work so well, I think, for businesses that have to do that are maybe like maker businesses, unless you're trying to encourage people to buy more of your making product, the products that you're buying. It
Okay.
really works. Yeah, it works better for people who have, for example, memberships or programs or trainings or courses. Something that think that people require some sort of mental energy or capacity to complete, that require some sort of personal transformation. Um, you of course can, if you're selling awesome little cards, you can definitely gamify some sort of system with people in terms of buying and things like this. But it really is, I'm mostly focused on using gamification for some sort of transformation, habit forming in the other person. um, and then
So
the
exciting. I was just thinking because, I do workshops, like in-person workshops with people over
yes,
a couple of days. And so I was
yes.
just, while you're talking, I was going, I actually had that ding, 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 ding sound effect go off in my mind, but I never really thought about, yeah, you're bonuses, rewards, you get that, da da da. Yeah, anyway,
Yeah,
continue going. I just got
exactly.
really excited for a minute
Yeah.
because I don't think I saw all the potential until you kind of listed it out there.
Yeah, and I think most people um, don't actually think of all the potential, and also because there's this tendency to think of gamification as something that we call like leaderboards, badges, and points. So
Yes.
this idea that that's what gamification is. If you can just add, if you have a leaderboard of some sort, if you can give points and you can give badges, boom, you have something that's gamified. But actually, that's not really true. Like gamification is really two parts. Is like the science, and then there's the art of applying game principles to business. And the thing that's really important to know is that it's tailored to the specific business that you have, and to your specific business goals. It's then also tailored to your customers, and it's tailored to the specific product that you're trying to gamify. So, for example, although you can create an ecosystem for your entire company and have different things add up and do all kinds of things, um, the 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 game principles that you would design for, say, product A in your company, let's say it's a program, would be different than the ones that you would design, say, for your membership. Now, there might be some similarities, but you wouldn't take the things that you did for your program exactly as they were done and just slap them over to your membership. Because very likely who's taking your program is also very different than who's being part of your membership. And in
Mhm.
addition to that, um, like they're two separate products. So what motivates people and what points to motivate the customer journey is slightly different. So what motivates people, how often they interact, these kinds of things are all very different. And certainly for trainings, that's a whole other thing. I've also helped people redesign or think about how they can make their trainings more playful. And those are that would be very different than say someone that has just say a standard course or something. So
Wow. So, do you kind of think that this is like an untapped kind of opportunity that a lot of people, because when you, I mean, gamification and even talking about game theory and all this kind of stuff, it's not
mhm.
super common yet, is it?
Yeah, so I don't think it's common in the online world. Honestly, I think it's very common if you start. This is like it's super saturated in the certain academic settings, and it's definitely common within businesses. So I mean, like established businesses who already have maybe at least 100 employees and up, and but not a lot of people are supporting entrepreneurs and business owners, primarily because I think it's my belief that they don't think it's a viable business model as a gamification expert, and I am seeing that that's untrue. So people are
Yeah.
hiring me to help them with their businesses. So
Yeah.
I just don't think that they believe it's a viable opportunity. And now I think it's even more important given that so many people are coming online. Work is being redefined as we know it for so many companies.
Yeah.
And so understanding how to design the things that you offer your clients so that they're more deeply engaged and so that you can carve out that time away from all the other online focus that they, because in addition to social media now they have to spend all this time focusing on other things, and you're asking them to come and focus on you yet again, another online outlet. So you
Yeah.
have to have something else to bring them, to engage them.
Right.
um,
Kind of like the
yeah.
struggle for attention, you know?
Yes,
They
exactly.
got their attention. Well, how do you keep them,
Mhm.
focused? I have a time management course called the Task Reduction System for our
Mhm.
listener at home, if you're interested. But it's about during that course, I do talk about the importance of laser focus for the time that
Mhm.
you're dedicated to that course.
Mhm.
And we do struggle for attention, in
Mhm.
society at large, especially
Mhm.
with social media and everything at the, on our phone right there.
Mhm.
So, are some of the benefits of working with someone like you and also just understanding and learning about gamification that you're able to kind of help, people to retain or to keep them longer looking at your product or engaging with you? Or what are some of the other benefits?
Yeah, so one of the benefits are, for example, yes, um, engagement, not for that product, so they stick around longer because you're able to add gamification at the points in the customer journey where we know people tend to lose interest. So that helps. Of course, we're already assuming that whatever product you're selling or have is already good, right? If you don't have a good product, it's not good content. There's nothing that you can add to it that's going to make people motivated.
I'm
So I
glad you
just want to
established that. So if
yes, yeah, because it's a bit like adding chocolate to broccoli, right? Like you still got broccoli. So
yeah,
it's
okay.
yeah, so gamification is a booster. It expands on what you already have, right?
Yeah, yeah. It
Um,
enhances,
enhances.
goal you've already got going on. Right?
Ex-
Yeah.
exactly, exactly. So definitely, it helps. Like I said, for engagement, it helps with retention.
Yeah.
It helps with the long-term customer value because clients will just love what you have more than normal, right? They're just gonna love everything you have, and they'll just keep
Yeah.
coming back. Plus, you usually get better testimonials and and then more referrals. So um, a lot of times it's not so much that you're able to sell more products, but you don't have to like the base of the people are just gonna come back to more. And the example I always use is um, how games work in general, how the sales of games work, and I've used the example of Witcher, which is one of the really great game franchises. And so when when Witcher first came out, they did really well. I think they sold, gosh, I don't remember the stats now, but let's say that they sold like 500,000 copies in 2007, whenever that was. And then that's how many people, played it. They did really well. But because they had so many fans from it, when they released the second Witcher, um, four times as many, they had four times the number of sales than the first Witcher. And then by the time they released the third one, they had 10 times as many sales as the second Witcher. So, and you could argue, okay, well, they had more time for marketing, these kinds of things. But if you also look at the numbers and you know the costs of millions of dollars it costs to make a good game, and the hundreds of hours and hundreds of people that you have to employ, really the difference you could see has to do more with the fan base than the amount of money that they were able to put back into marketing.
Mm,
And I think this just shows the power of games, that when you really get people immersed in a different experience, they just can't help but tell others about it. Already,
yeah.
people can leverage that anyway from creating really wonderful products that already happens naturally, and people already create fans.
Yeah.
But this just adds an extra layer of that. And yeah.
I love that. I mean, when you were speaking as well, I was kind of thinking about the inner child, I guess.
Mm,
And, I don't know whether or not you're familiar with that term. You may
mm-hmm,
be, but I think that, the inner child, it's like, life is so serious. We take life so seriously that, I'm sure for many of us, we remember those nights out where we laughed
mm-hmm,
a lot or we went out and we had fun and we
mm-hmm,
enjoyed it. And it kind of sounds like, through this world that you're actually helping people to feed their inner child and to
mm-hmm,
almost enjoy their life a little
mm-hmm,
bit more.
mm-hmm. Yeah, and actually that's one of the values of my company as a whole, right? It's just I as a as a business owner and gamification consultant, one, I want to help business owners think like game designers because then they can see the possibilities of play and fun. But ultimately, the deeper engagement that you have with your clients is really to lighten the world, to remember our innate capacity to play, to be playful, that we are indeed playful beings, and that's what's true and honest about who we are. And so much about life is so serious and so structured and so must do and have that, and I gotta pay that bill and gotta clean that, and we forget that at the center of who we are is really sort of spirit, and I believe the spirit is one that wishes us to be playful and remember to be appreciative of the life that we have, of the things that we have, of and when we laugh, when we have joy, when we take things lightly is when we remember the gift of life. So
Yeah.
this is sort of like the value behind what I do,
Yeah,
Uh,
no, it's
yeah.
good. I mean, and then, there's that whole like, adage or phrase or whatever, where people go, when you love what you do, you don't work a day in your life. And it's like, well, what if you play at work all day as
Hmm.
well? I mean, doesn't that just
Hmm.
add to your value of life and the quality of life? Not only all the, doing that, but then all the benefits that you were talking
Hmm.
about earlier when you use this kind of technology. So I guess I'm curious, well, I'm curious about like a million things to be honest, but where have you seen this work for business owners? And I guess while you were speaking to me, all I could think about was I don't even know how to get started. So I know at the very end of
Hmm.
our conversation together, you are going to give me and our listener at home some tips and tricks on how to get
Hmm.
started. But I would love to know some stories where you've seen this work for business owners or entrepreneurs previously.
Sure. So let's see. Maybe I can talk about um, like one of my clients. Um, so and this gives you a very simple, easy thing that we did, but it made a big difference. And maybe this goes into a bit of the tricks. What? Tongue tied today. Okay,
Remix,
sorry.
remix.
We're sorry, everyone. It's a little later here in Portugal, so my brain is
I
starting
know
to
you
shut
are talking at 10:30 p.m. Yes.
yeah. Okay. But
Tips
tips
and
and
tricks.
tricks.
Yes,
Yeah,
okay.
tips and tricks. We got it. Yay. Okay. Well, I had a client, and she was putting together a course to help entrepreneurs manage their money better. Now, it's something that we all need. We all know it's important that money management as a business owner is an important part, but is
Yes.
it or is it not a snooze fest when you think?
Yeah, it's definitely a snooze fest. I find
Yeah,
it sometimes exciting.
yeah,
I don't know why, but but it's sort of, I guess, because it's kind of like puzzles, which I like.
yeah,
But you're right. In general, it's a snooze fest. And also in general, it's actually very complicated for a lot of
yeah,
people to wrap their head around the concept of even going there. I've spoken to a
exactly.
lot of people who have, those folders filled with receipts and don't know what to do
Hmm.
with them.
Hmm. And then of course, then you want to take a course on it, so you're gonna pay money to sit there, and then what are you gonna do with it? So she's like, what
Yeah.
what can we do? So one of the very simple things that we did, of course, I have this quiz, which is the play personality quiz. It didn't come, the the personalities didn't come from me. They come from Stuart Brown, who is a play researcher. He has something called the Institute of Play, and he's written several books. But in any case, the play personality really helps me understand the kind of person they are. And then I have a little template that I have them fill out to tell me about the games that they played when they were children. So that's tip number one. The things that you currently enjoy, tip number two. These are all things that can help you figure out what to do. And then based on that, and of course, a few game mechanics, which uh, it would take a lot to get into, but we redesigned the course so it had the theme of pirates. So I had this pirate theme, and
Oh, perfect. Because of the
and
gold, the
with a
treasure, whatever.
exactly, and then
Yeah.
it had a pirate map that people could go through as they were completing the different areas. And of course, this was like our first iteration of doing it. But what it did is it turned the entire course and, of course, the content and the way that it was structured into something that was much more digestible. Were you still having to maybe do a video where you had to look at a spreadsheet? Sure. But then the writing, the rewards, how you were getting to it was much more fun and light, right? It wasn't within the context of like profit and loss statement. Eeks,
Yeah.
so and so yeah, so this is what it does, and she yeah, and she launched it. She had good success with it. I cannot tell you how many people completed it or didn't complete it. She didn't get back to me about that. But I know that people enjoyed it. So that's just one very simple example of
Yeah.
how I worked with someone, and 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 how a couple of small tweaks can really make a difference in how you design something. And we had a lot of fun doing it. She had a lot of fun putting it together because it went from something that was really dry to
Yeah.
something that was much more alive and vibrant.
Yeah, I think that's so awesome. So I will just say that this episode has been brought to us by the task reduction system. Learn to reduce your work hours by half without playing catch up on the weekend. And all the details are in the show notes. All right. I want to go there for a minute about color and sound, actually, because you just kind of talked a little bit about, making a course that, could have been sort of dry and flat and making it a little bit more interesting. And I can't help but think about the importance of color, in relation to having positive outcomes. Did you kind of study the power of color? Do you take that into account when you're helping people, design their courses?
Not exactly. I didn't study the power of colors other than I was really lucky to have gotten some training in branding. So
Yeah.
I'm able to use that to understand the person's brand and their values and how all that can fit in together with their business. And and so it's more like that. It's not that I know, for example, okay, yeah, other than very basic things, that people react to red a certain way or react to
Yeah.
green a certain way. But I base it more on the personality and the brand of that person and their company
Yeah.
rather than the the A/B type testing
Right.
psychology of like what colors people are attracted to or react to. Um, yeah.
I guess what you kind of been saying all through
Mm-hmm.
the conversation actually is a lot about almost being authentic with your own voice and what you're
Mm-hmm.
representing. So I like I like how you kind of explain that because in a way, we know red's an action color.
Mm-hmm.
Very often like yellow can be about like
Mm-hmm.
memory and recall and things like that. So there you can use color definitely to, I guess, help accentuate what you're already doing. But if your brand has nothing to do with those colors, it wouldn't make any sense for you to then inject these random colors into whatever it is you're doing. All right. What about sounds? Like, because I guess when I think about video games, I do think
Mm-hmm.
about sound
Mm-hmm.
and color and like
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
leaderboards and badges, which I know you kind of set me straight at the very beginning. But
Yeah.
I guess not everyone's going to be utilizing sound in what they're creating either, right? But can they still
No.
use this sort of, gamification sort of theory?
Yeah, they can still use gamification theory, and you don't necessarily. Uh, you can use sound to the degree that it feels comfortable with you,
Mhm.
um, like for example, yeah, if you're doing a training and you want to signal some sort of you know I don't know, excitement, then you can definitely use sound there. But we're not using sound the way that games use sound to help you notice that you just gotten it, that you just achieve something. So you were talking about Mario Kart
Yeah.
before, but if we talk about
Yeah.
Mario, like every time there's music playing in the background as you're running, and then like every time like you jump, there's a sound, and every time you
Oh, yeah.
grab something, there's a sound. So that's a
Yeah.
little bit more difficult to do um, in a gamified environment unless you've built an actual ecosystem, like you've actually built a software that people have to go in and do.
Right.
Like
Right.
uh, Yukai Chow, actually, he's someone who I've also continued to mentor under for gamification. And he has something called Octalysis Prime, and it's basically a video game that teaches people how to, or it's like gamified community video game experience that teaches people how to use gamification. And in that case, he has lots of sounds and in the because it's a software. So if it's a
Right.
software that you're building, then it makes sense to insert um, constant sounds. But that doesn't
Yeah.
mean that at the end, for example, of a course, or at the end of like I'm trying to think like at the end of something like say a module in a course that you might not have a little sound that plays. You can definitely do that, but you're not
Mm.
constantly playing sound in the background because if you look at any kind of course creation platform, they don't offer the ability to play sounds constantly while you're completing your program.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
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 so I guess just to clarify then for our listener at home, because for a lot of us, we're still learning about this sort of thing.
yeah.
You're not helping people make video games. What you're
No.
helping people do is find the product or service that they already offer, and then helping people to make it a little bit more engaging and interesting using game,
Yes.
using
Exactly.
play. Right.
Yeah, adding game principles and things. That doesn't mean I haven't helped or produced video games, but in
Yeah.
terms of entrepreneurs, I mean, of course, if someone wants to pay me enough money to help produce a game for them, no problem.
Yes.
But it costs a lot of money. I mean,
Yes.
to build games, you just to build a small game, you're talking about like maybe like $50,000. So they're not cheap. Building games is very
Yeah.
expensive, and
Yeah.
so yeah, so this is sort of like the bit of the middle ground. You get to use game principles or game mechanics. So the way that certain games are designed, there's certain ways in which things move or act or behave within a game, and we take those principles and we add them to business.
Have you
And that's what's the behavioral science behind it.
Right. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever had a business or a client that's come to you and you've just gone, "You know what? I just can't make this fun," or "I just can't gamify this sort of, I don't know,
Yeah.
category or concept?"
Well, the one I've had two potential people. Well, one, they wanted me to build like this app um, that did all kinds of different things, and to build it would cost a lot of money based on their budget. So I couldn't do that. But the other that makes it really difficult is something like photography. Like unless you have a course in photography, but if you're trying to gamify photography, that was very challenging for me to
Yeah.
to help someone who's a photographer gamify their photography services, right? I mean, you can come up with packages or things to incentivize people to buy more, but photography itself as a service was really difficult for me to try to
Yeah.
gamify.
I guess what came to mind when you said that would be like a treasure map that you would follow
Mm-hmm.
locations to shoot your to do the photo shoot, but at the same
Yeah, so
time, is it really important?
exactly, because the thing is that it's usually you're picking the um, you're picking your locations based on what you want to see in your brand or what you want to see in something else. So
Yeah.
so it's that's one that was tricky for me. I mean, I tried a little bit with one person, didn't quite work out. Who knows now? I'm much more savvy and can come
Yeah.
up with all kinds of things. But yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, you were talking sort of about your client who had the the course or the concept there with
Mhm.
financial planning and everything like that. So, is part of what you do you kind of take a category like that and then you almost change the language around it to be a little bit more accessible? Like you were talking about pirates and,
Mhm.
treasure and things like that. So do you kind of is that almost a way to make it more of a game where you like add in these characters and, these situations that might not necessarily come from a financial um in a financial scenario? Like, do you know what I'm trying? Maybe I'm not
Yes,
articulating that very well.
no, 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 I get what you mean. It's not quite like that. I see what you're getting at, but it's not quite like that. So basically, this would be like this. This is a summary so that people understand. I use this model, which we're not able to show, but if you can imagine, on the like right hand, you have the designer or the business owner. In the middle, you have the product, and on the left hand, you have the player or the client or the customer. Essentially, I help it takes all three of those elements. It takes understanding what those three elements are and how they play into one another for for me to help someone design an experience. So the first thing with the designer or the business owner, we have to understand their play personality and the goals that they have for that product. For their customers or their players, then I go through a process where I help them understand what types of player types tend to come and play in their arena, in their and it's important because without understanding the player types, then you don't understand what kind of rewards you can get them. Like, for
Right.
example, one of the player types is like a social player type. If you happen to have this player type within your customer base and it's a significant player type, and everything that you are developing in terms of your rewards or game elements have to do with competition, you're going to lose this person because there's someone who really craves being in some sort of social setting, chatting with
Right.
others, connecting with others. So there has to be something in the product, the middle part, that helps that customer have a place in it. And so then the very last part is then designing the product to ensure it meets your goals and your personality, but it's also designed so that it addresses the needs and the motivations of the different player types who are part of your customer base. And that's how then you start coming up with cool rewards or cool mechanics or cool fun things. So we knew this from my client, we knew that the type of personality of people that would come to buy her product were people are already pretty motivated, because if you're buying that kind of course, you really want to know about money. But she wanted to make it so it would be a bit more of an achievement, something that could, you know, um, achieve through like the pirate um, map, so to speak, and make it a bit more fun and playful because they enjoy that too. So it's a
Yeah.
bit like this.
Yeah, yeah. And I guess when you're enjoying yourself, you kind of talked about that you're going to stay with the product longer, you're going to have that
Mm-hmm.
retention. Do you find that also this helps people to learn as well? Like
Mm-hmm.
we do talk about, because I do a fair amount of reading on this sort of,
Mm-hmm.
not necessarily gamification yet, but I'm on board now.
Mm-hmm.
I'm on the board. That's a game. That's a game pun. There we go. But we do talk about the use of story and how, like,
Yeah.
when you have story, you connect with you've
Mhm.
got empathy and you've got all these things,
Mhm.
and it helps you to recall
Mhm.
and learn a lesson. So is it kind of a similar stuff that you can do with what you're teaching as well?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And particular if you as a business owner either have a storyteller personality or you are a fan of storytelling type games or storytelling type play. In that case, then it really becomes fun to use those kinds of tools and things,
Yeah, like
because
choose your own
they're
adventure. This is what happens if
exactly.
you don't invest your money. This is what.
Yes, exactly. Exactly, exactly. You can create all kinds of things. So,
Oh,
but
that's
again, like
cool.
I said, it really also depends on the business owner because like some people really like to have something that's more of like a role playing, where you have a character and this kind of thing. And so that really flavors the the kind how you go about the product. Other people really like competition. So that also flavors how you do how you design the product. So it's a mix of the three, like I said, the business owners, their goals for the product, as well as their personality, the players, the people who are coming into your playpen as your customers and what their personalities are, and then you designing the product and the needs to complete the product, right? So what will it
Yeah.
take for people to actually feel motivated to finish that or to be, because sometimes it's not a matter of finishing like a membership, it's about getting people to keep coming back to it. So
Yeah.
understanding what impedes them from coming back, or in a training, right? Like where do you see that people are not having the transformation? You think you're presenting a concept that's like magnificent and you get blank stares, or they get it
Yeah.
at the level but you're sort of hoping for this aha and they just don't quite get there. So yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool. And I love, yeah, I love all that. It's just making me think about my own business and some of the things that I'm doing. And I know
Mm-hmm.
in some of the workshops that I have, I do like gift packs. So everybody gets
Mm-hmm.
a weird pen. So they
Mm-hmm.
use that pen during the,
Mm-hmm.
the session, or
Yeah.
we do art, like there's art
Mm-hmm.
and things like that. So
Mm-hmm.
these are all elements, would you say, of kind of adding, I guess in a way it's you're adding joy into
Mm-hmm.
everything that you're doing.
Yes, exactly. And those are exactly things that the introducing things are different, thinking outside of the box so that you're not, yeah, you're doing something that bring people back to that playful spirit and not just, oh great, I have to go to yet another workshop. Even if it's an interesting topic, how it's
Yeah.
designed and how it's conducted makes such a difference. So
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, we're almost at our hour. This always happens to me. I think I'd like to go into the whole tips and tricks. I know you've already given away a lot. I mean, you've talked about making sure you've got goals for the product,
yeah.
understanding your player types, understanding what rewards you can give them. Is this kind of, wrapped up in your tips and tricks as well as just really kind of pressing upon people that they need to understand their product and who they're serving? Or do you have some other ones to add as well?
Yeah, no, I think those are definitely it.
Yeah.
If I had to add a couple more, um, like maybe one more tip would be any way that you can reward your customer, do it. So most of the time, people they purchase something from you, even if it's a training and other than showing up or participating in whatever you're offering them, you're not rewarding them. You're not making them feel good for for their action. And so if you can think of ways to making them feel good for participating, or making them feel good for even purchasing the product, or even for showing up and starting to
Yeah.
complete the product, that can be really powerful to keep the customer going. And it doesn't have to be complicated. It could be as simple as an email that says, "Hey, Joni, I notice you have completed module 2. That's fantastic. You know, only, you know, 40% of the people that go through this course complete module 2, and you're so far ahead of the game. Let us know if
Yeah.
there's something else you need or how we can support you. You're doing a fantastic job. And we just wanted to let you know that the transformation that awaits you at the end of this is going to be fantastic. So keep going. So,
Love that, girl. Yes.
so it just,
Yeah.
it can just be something really simple. It doesn't have to be like, you don't have to have a designed reward, or it doesn't have to be, sometimes it could be funny if you have like a joker type personality. Maybe you send funny gifts when people are do fun stuff, right? Because
Yeah.
you know, whatever it is like, hey, you've earned the right to watch this funny video I made with my cat. I don't know. So
That's
like,
great. Yeah,
so
I
it's
love that.
it's just like this. So
It's
yeah,
acknowledging as well, like, hey, somebody's choosing to spend their dollar with you. And
yeah.
then, you're rewarding because, a lot of like building client relationships and stuff like
Hmm.
that, a lot of people forget that your relationship often starts after you've sold something to them.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah, and that's what it sounds like you're saying is you're going honor, what the client or, your customer is doing, in whatever way feels authentic again with with your journey, but I guess injecting fun into it.
Yep, exactly,
I
yeah.
remember one time I messaged a guy on Instagram, Evan Carmichael. He does a lot of those really inspirational YouTube videos. Anyway, I must have
Hmm.
tagged him in something, and he sent me a DM with just him doing like a thumbs up. And I just thought that was really cool, and it made me feel special for a minute, you know. And it's
Exactly.
yeah, because I thought this guy's got hundreds of thousands of followers, and he's
Yeah,
taking, and it's possible that he's got a couple photos of
yeah,
himself in the phone that he just
yeah,
uploads to people, which would make a
yeah,
lot of sense from a time management
yeah,
perspective as well. But that he did that, he kind of rewarded me for tagging
yeah,
him. And yeah,
yeah.
it's fascinating. I never really considered that being almost a gamification thing, but it kind of
Yeah,
is.
it is because it's
Yeah.
rewarding. There's a book I always recommend, and I talk about it in my webinars. So for those of you listening, it's a really easy read. It's called Reality is Broken. It's by Jane McGonigal, and she also has a really very famous uh, TED Talk. I don't know how many views it has. It's gajillion views. By that I mean, like, I don't know if it's 7 million, 10 million, I don't know. But it
Wow.
really is a really great book that talks about this reward system. And so I would really recommend it.
Okay, great. Well, we're about to wrap up, so I do want to know how people can get a hold of you. You did talk about a webinar, so let's go through all that in just 1 second. I do want to know, though, what are your favorite games to play? And are there any
Ooh,
businesses that you think are doing this sort of thing really well that we can also kind of like, have a look at on social and see what they're doing?
oh my gosh. I have to say, I haven't played a game in a while. That's such a shameful thing, but it's true because you're building a business. You're doing other things when you're gamifying. You're like, I'm designing. I don't have time to play, but this happens. Okay, but there's a game I really loved. You can play it on your iPad, or you can play it. I don't know if it's on PlayStation, but but anyway, it's really great game. It's called Gorogoa, Gorogoa, and it's really a beautiful game. It's basically a puzzle story game. So you have to complete the
Ooh,
puzzle, and as you're completing the puzzle, the story moves forward.
oh, that sounds
So
wonderful.
yeah, so I tend to, when I do play, I tend to try to find independent video games because they tend to have a very unique perspective. And this was built by an independent game maker, and eventually he was picked up by a publishing house. But it's a really great game, so I would recommend that game.
All right. Well, I'll put a link to that in the show notes, and I'll also put a
Yeah.
link to that Reality is Broken book as well as the TED Talk. So I need to bring up the Queen's Gambit. Have you watched it
Oh
yet?
yeah, yes, I did. I did
Oh
totally watch it.
my God. You know what? I have no shame in saying this. I watched it twice.
You did? Oh, that's fantastic.
I love, well, I gotta say, I love any movie where, or book or anything like that, where somebody's really smart and they're figuring
Mhm.
out, like Good Will Hunting. I
Mhm.
love that movie. I love
Mhm.
anything where people are, what's that? The girls, the dragons tattoo, I can't botch the name
Oh,
of it. Yes,
yes,
so
yes,
she's
yes.
really good with numbers. I love this kind of thing. So I just thought the
Yeah.
Queen's Gambit was absolutely amazing. What did
Mhm.
you think of that? And do you think that it's possibly like going to change the industry of gamification, because now all of a sudden chess is cool?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, chess is very cool, and I heard from some people that uh, chess boards are going out left and right. People are buying them from Amazon and all kinds of places. So if you have a chess company, you did really well.
Yeah.
Um, well, chess is a game, so I would not call it gamification because it's in itself a
A
game.
game.
And
Right.
and sometimes I do use chess as an explanation to help people understand, like, okay, this is what a game is, this is what game mechanics are, this is what aesthetics are, to so that people have like a real understanding of what it is. um I suppose if they make a movie on gamification or something, then maybe people will think it's
Yeah.
really hot.
Yeah.
Yeah. um,
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
and also I don't think like her. I mean, meaning I don't have that capacity to be that strategic. She's brilliant in the movie.
Oh, she's
So
so brilliant.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's so good. So, yeah, so you like that movie?
Oh yeah, I loved it so much. It was
Yeah.
really great. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. All right, cool. Well, while we were talking, I was like, I have to ask if you've watched it because
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
just so good. All right.
It
Now
was
I'm
very good.
fangirling over the Queen's Gambit. All right. So, my sister, how can people get a hold of you? You did mention a webinar. Do you have a free webinar for people, or a paid webinar where they can learn about this? I'm going to put your Instagram, your LinkedIn, and your Twitter handles all in the show notes as
Yep.
well. But what else? Where else can people find you, and what else is coming up for you?
Yeah, sure. So you can definitely find me on my website. That's tinthue.com. That's tinthue.com. And usually there I will have information on my webinars, my workshops, my courses, and my newsletter. If you want to join my newsletter and get tips and tricks on gamification, you can do that. Um, as you mentioned at the beginning of the show, I'm a co-founder of the Playful Creative Summit. So if you want to hear voices of other creatives or gamification people, you can join us at the playfulcreativesummit.com. And that summit is actually free. Um, and it goes live on April 21st, 2021 of this year. You can find me also on Instagram at tint.hue, Hue. And of course, when you put the Twitter handles, just DM me if you have questions or things like that. I will probably be running another workshop in February. Actually, I'm not sure when this will be released, but
It's actually going to be releasing in 2 weeks, so it's
okay,
perfect
great.
timing. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Great. Yeah. So if you're interested in that, you can DM me, and usually the workshop is like 2 sessions of 2 hours, and people get a lot of value from it. It's enough to give you a jump start on gamifying something. So yeah.
That is so cool. Thank you so much, Alia. What a great
Yeah.
conversation. It's been really fun, as it should have
Thank you.
been. I do feel like we need that shoo, 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 or like some kind of like cool sound
Yeah.
effect. But
Yeah.
yeah, thank you so much for just making this concept, I guess just opening up my eyes, and I
Yeah.
know the listener at home, and making it a little bit more. I don't know. Sometimes when you don't really know a lot about a subject, it
Mhm.
seems a bit daunting to go there, but you
Yeah.
made it really accessible. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you. That's good to hear. Yeah.
Fabulous. Talk to you next time.
Okay. Till next time. Thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed the episode, please do leave us a review where you listen to your podcast and share it with your friends. New episodes every Monday.